of person who's inclined to come up with solutions when I feel a bit of a whinge coming on. So I guess that means it's time to talk about Formula One sprint weekends? Sprints. You either hate them or well, I'm not going to say you love them, but you're fundamentally chill with the concept, just maybe not so much the execution. I'm in camp number 2, which is the one with the positive sentiments, I guess. But I don't see the point in moaning about it either way unless you're prepared to come up with some solutions. So here's my proposal to improve my neighbours are currently pulling their caravan up their rather steep driveway, so we're just going to wait for them to finish doing that. Okay, they're done now. Moving on. But I don't see the point of moaning. But I don't see the point in moaning about it either way unless you're going to come up with some solutions. So here's my proposal for improving the enjoyability, is that a word? Of an F1 sprint weekend. Enjoyability. It is indeed a word. I have similar issues to many other people who enjoy the fundamental concept of the sprint, but don't really like how it makes the whole Grand Prix weekend play out, I suppose. What with it feeling like main race spoilers and all that, unless there's some serious condition changes going into the Saturday. I like the competitive running on every day. I like having a shorter race to get excited about on a Saturday. I even really quite like having a separate qualifying for the sprint rather than having the sprint set the grid for the Grand Prix. But I don't like the quali just basically being the same version as the main quali. But the fact remains, sprint weekends are just kind of meh when you're watching on the telly. Maybe they're different in person, I don't know. I'm probably never gonna know because I'm still recovering financially from a trip to Europe back in like 2017. You think I can afford to go to a whole ass Grand Prix? Nah, not in this economy. Not from this country. Anyway, I digress. So, sprints. Can they be improved? Oh god, this is going to get so complicated. I may need some bullet points for you to follow. Let's be honest, having 2 qualifying events where it's the same Q1, Q2, Q3 format is a bit tedious. So let's crack in with one-shot qualifying. But Kimmy, you scream, track evolution, it's so unfair. And sure, whatever, I don't really care. But I do have a solution for that. And it takes inspiration from something that so many people have been chucking around. I am looking directly at you, Carlos Sainz. Reverse grid one-shot qualifying. Well, maybe not quite reverse grid qualifying. It's really more championship order one-shot qualifying, so actually not reverse at all, but the fundamental concept remains the same. Those at the tail end of the championship get priority when it comes to the track conditions, so they're going last when more rubber has been laid down. And if you're first, then you get the greenest asphalt. And sure, there's the possibility that it might start chucking it down with rain, or it might get really, really windy. But this is not an indoor sport and that happens already. Shit happens, it ain't ever going to be perfect. But you won't have red flags screwing up people's last minute hot laps anymore. This also theoretically means that fewer tyres will be used over the course of the weekend, seeing as only one set of tyres will be needed per car for the sprint qualifying. And that's in line with Formula One's intention to reduce tyre consumption overall, which is only a good thing, right? I think it makes a lot of sense. So, point number 1. One-shot qualifying. Next up is a separate sprint championship for drivers. Points will go towards constructors in the main championship, but for drivers, it's a different competition. Points will also go all the way to 19th, which means it becomes more of an average finishing position type of event. So no points for 20th, 1 for 19th, 2 for 18th, so on and so forth, all the way up to second, which would get 18 points, and first, which would get a little bit of an extra at 20. And why don't we also chuck in a point for fastest lap? That can be won by anybody regardless of finishing position. And I know what you're thinking, fastest lap point for anybody, that's just going to cause chaos. But I don't think so, not when there's points going all the way down to 19th. And I do have some other thoughts coming up that would affect that as well. A DNF results in a duck. If you don't finish the race, you do not get any points. And there is no classification based on distance completed. And this whole separate competition thing may sound utterly stupid, but it does feed into my next point. All teams, just like a regular Grand Prix, must do their best to enter 2 cars, but for a sprint, one of them must be a reserve or a development driver. This could be an experienced reserve, the likes of Stoffel van Dorn or Antonio Giovinazzi or Mick Schumacher, but for at least 50% of the races, it must be somebody who has never had a full-time Formula One contract. Unless there's extenuating circumstances, because you never know when somebody's going to get injured randomly, right? But basically, if there's 7 sprints in a season, then 4 of them must be done by somebody who is effectively a rookie. Why even allow experienced drivers in the first place? Well, I don't know, it's up for debate, but I reckon it'd be really useful for those who are struggling to retain their super license, so that we don't end up with another Esteban Gutierrez situation, because that must suck. And no, they won't be at risk of binning one of the cars in the lead up to the Grand Prix, because the teams will be allowed a 3rd car specifically and only for this purpose. Bump up the budget cap a little bit and give some academy drivers an opportunity. This not only resolves a lot of the issues with current testing restrictions, but it also gives these guys an opportunity to drive a Formula One car in proper racing conditions. It also means that come silly season, things might get a bit spicy if there's some unexpected performance differentials. And when I say must not have had a full-time Formula One contract, this is specifically to allow reserve drivers who have actually had to drive briefly, like Pietro Fittipaldi or Liam Lawson, to be included in the rookie category. So what about practice? Am I just expecting these rookies and supposed washed up has-beens to go out there and bang out a quali lap without having any time in the car? No, don't be ridiculous. Friday comes with an extra hour-long practice session specifically for sprint subs. And most importantly, it's before the Grand Prix practice session. This has a massive benefit because at the moment, one of the biggest complaints from teams and drivers is that they only get 1 practice session to set up the car, and then they're stuck in Parc Ferme conditions. And this was really highlighted this past weekend in Austin, where both Lewis and Charles got disqualified because their planks got ground down too much. So now they'll have an extra data set. And with that data coming from a session before they first take the cars out for the main Grand Prix practice, it'll give them a bit of a head start when it comes to their setup, but it won't upset the cart when it comes to having competitive running on every day. If the conditions are going to be significantly different, say it's going to be a night race, then hold that practice session on the Thursday. The point is, it has to be held prior to the main Grand Prix practice on Friday. The last point is a twofer. It's to increase the sprint to half a Grand Prix race distance, but include a mandated pit stop. Now this pit stop can be taken at any point once the cars are out on circuit. So that means if they want to come in after the formation lap and start from the pit lane, they can. I was also chucking around the idea of a compulsory C5 compound, regardless of what compounds are being used for the remainder of the weekend, but that's really up for debate, and let me know in the comments if you think that's a good idea. And while you're down there, if you click like and subscribe, that would help me so much. I am a tiny little YouTuber with a very small following, and every time you interact with me, it gives the algorithm a little bit of a, hey, people don't hate this person. Maybe we should recommend her to others. And then I get happy. But anyway, the mandatory pit stop. This turns the sprint into, well, a sprint. No time management unless somebody is going full-on galaxy brain with the strategy, 150 Ks of flat-out racing. So what does this make the weekend look like? Thursday stays pretty much the same. It's media day. There might be a sprint sub practice session if the conditions require it, say it's going to be a night race, but otherwise that's pretty much unchanged. Friday you have sprint sub practice, unless it's happened on the Thursday, followed by Grand Prix practice, and then Grand Prix qualifying. Saturday, it's one-shot sprint qualifying, and then the sprint race. And Sunday, well, it remains the same. It's Grand Prix day. Hopefully, sans semi-spoilers. You're welcome. So what benefits do we get from this? More interesting racing with a focus on pace rather than management, which is going to assist those teams that struggle a bit more with their tyres. It gives more opportunity and experience for young drivers and reserves. It means probably less tyre consumption over the entire course of the weekend, #sustainability. Drivers who hate sprints won't necessarily have to do them, or will at least only have to do half of them. More learning for the teams when it comes to setup. You can watch the whole quali lap for every single driver. More points to go around overall, so those who regularly finish just outside will have a more accurate indication of how they're doing against those who had a few fluky finishes. I mean, what's not to like? And sure, one driver from every team's going to miss out on all of a Saturday, but it's not like we have sprints at all races. Oof, okay, I have been cooking this up for a few weeks now and it took basically no notes and have relied pretty much entirely on my incredibly sketchy memory, so I'm bound to have forgotten a point somewhere. Anyway, sprint weekends. They could be great, but at the moment, they're kind of balls. So, if you're part of FOM or Liberty Media, please pay attention to me. Okay, thanks, bye.